Okay, so the first theme that we'll talk about, so we'll spend about 10 minutes going through each of the big steps of the admissions process. So the first one I wanted to address was academics, right? So academics and the GPA. So that is actually that's chapter 1 of the book, right? We're starting off with academics, and you guys can follow along if you want, because under each of the themes of the book, so we've tried to try and get everyone a copy. It's a free book, by the way, so if anyone wants, it's a totally free book on Amazon.ca. Actually, if you order the hard copy, there's a cost. It's a couple of dollars, and that cost varies because that cost is really the cost of printing. So it sort of varies depending on the number of people who order the book in every given month. But if you download the ebook, that's completely free. So academics and the GPA, really the take-home point here is that getting into medical school is pretty difficult overall, right? It's a supply and demand issue. There's not enough supply, there's a lot enough demand. So my take-home message, and I'm going to put this out to the panel as well, maybe two main points that you would say about picking an undergrad program and the type of GPA that you need to get into medical school. So my main take-home message is you really have to put in the work to know what you're going to get into, right? So you have to spend the time early on to figure out what the academic requirements are, what the admission requirements are for each and every school that you're hoping to get into, and know what it takes to achieve those grades. We're starting off with grades because at the end of the day, that is the building block of any medical school application. There's a lot of other stuff that we talk about, research, extracurriculars, but without the grades, things start to get more challenging. And this is a fairly young audience here, right? We have folks who, most people are still in their undergrad. We have people in high school who completely have the opportunity to change that GPA. And often the top mistake I would see, like I see in first year undergrads, is sort of going in and picking a whole bunch of extracurriculars to join in their first year, and not paying enough of attention to that high school to university transition, which can be very difficult, and you have a big dip of your grades. That's quite hard to recover from because the criteria that most schools use tend to be quite unforgiving with respect to grades. So that's my main take-home point. Samir, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure, and I have a few thoughts in terms of picking your program. So, the beauty of medicine is that we're not looking for a cookie-cutter type formula. We're looking for people who are intelligent, who are hardworking, sincere, and honest, right? Who are professionals. And you can accomplish that with really any background going into medicine. Having said that, just like Nandine was saying, your grades matter a lot, right? If you look at the average GPA for entering medical school classes, you're looking at 3.9 plus GPAs, right? And that's actually very similar to the one applying as well. So if you want to compete in that space, you have to at the very least have a competitive GPA. There's no excuse for a non-competitive GPA, right? And for sure, there's exceptions that exist to people who've gotten in with a 3.0 or 3.5, but you really can't plan to be the exception. If your plan is, I'm going to be that exception, that's not going to work. You've got to plan for the best, and then maybe there's an exception somehow you can sort of make it through. So, when you plan to pick your program, be mindful of, at least 2 or 3 things. The first one being that pick a program which will get you a high GPA, right? You have to keep that in the back of your mind, and as much as, it may mean sometimes you've got to compromise on the kinds of courses you're taking, you have to keep in mind your longer goal, which is to get into medical school, right? The second thing with picking your program is, if you're somebody who's not completely decided or is not entirely sure about what you want to do beyond sort of undergrad, you may want to pick a program which adds flexibility to kind of your future plans. Whether it's giving you more options to get into a master's or a professional school, those are things you want to consider as well, right? And then the third thing is, don't be shy to try careers which are, professional in their own nature undergrad. So I have a lot of friends who came into medicine through engineering. There's people who come into medicine through law, through business. So these are all things, again, which have a lot of the same core features, but you want to find something which will, A, interest you, get you a high GPA, and B, also make you a bit ready for other professional careers if you need to. I'll pass it on to you.
So I just know that there's quite a few high school students here, just to get you an idea of what the GPA and stuff is like in university. So, as you know, some of the, let's just take U of T as an example, for like sciences, there's a minimum entrance grade, was it something like 80% to get in? And that's from high school to university. And I remember my very first day in physics course, there was the very first question where they involved an iClicker. If you know an iClicker, basically you have this remote in your hand and you can participate in these questions. And the very first question was, what do you want to do in 4 years? And out comes, there's like about 5 choices, and surprisingly, or very, perhaps not so surprisingly, about 95% of the class of 800 people responded that they wanted to go into medicine. By the end of 4 years, I mean, you're looking at around 800 students in that class, and probably hundreds of universities worldwide, and that applies to U of T's medical school. So and then by the end, when you see the applications, it's now down to about 3,000. So you can see around how much competition there is. So I totally agree. There's a lot of emphasis that's put on the GPA. And also, I was involved as part of the file reviewers and the interviewer process for the past 2016-2017 admissions committee for the U of T Medical School. And just to give an idea, they also use a computer algorithm to screen out a lot of applicants who don't have a competitive GPA. So that's sort of like the first step in to see whether or not they will even invite you to an interview. So GPA is really important. The other thing is, with regards to selecting for a particular program, and I think there's a common misconception that you have to have study in the sciences or life sciences to get in, but that's actually not the case. While the majority, around 9% of the students who get into medical school do study the sciences, there's also, some of my friends are involved in engineering, arts, music, English. So there's a lot of different things that you can choose to study, and you really have to pick something that you're interested in so that you can sort of put in your efforts to get the best marks.
I'm just going to actually add one more point, just kind of going back to the idea of, first year. When people ask, me what the most important year is of their undergrad, often the answer you'll get like third year, fourth year, with your advanced courses, applying to grad school, med school. For me, to be honest, it's your first year, right? I mean, having done for a number of years and having been through a lot of that myself, the majority of people spend their second, third, and fourth years making up for the mistakes in the first year, right? That's just the reality of undergrad is, because you're young. There's a huge transition point at that time, going from high school to undergrad, especially the first year. It's a new place, maybe a new residence building, new friends, new colleagues, new courses, a different level of academic excellence you've got to accomplish. So, make sure for the ones who are still kind of early in their careers or their pathway, spend the extra time in the first year, mastering the courses, and slogging it away, because that will really pay off in second, third, and fourth year. You'd rather have the extra effort in the first year than the fourth year, because it's much more difficult to go back and make up for first year than it is to kind of taking time off in fourth year. So don't underestimate the importance of your first year. As much as you want to explore things and do other things outside of your courses and your classwork, you can't have that as a second priority, because it's costly in the long run.
Great, totally agree. Okay, so let's open this up to questions now. So what I will say is, if you have a question, so just stand up. Just quickly introduce yourself. So just give us your name, where you're from. So maybe if you're a high school student, what high school. If you're an undergrad, maybe what college and what your major is, and just ask us your question. We'll probably repeat the question, so folks on the Facebook Live panel can also hear the question, and then we'll sort of see amongst the three of us who wants to take the question. All right. Any questions on sort of this whole process of grades? How should you pick a program? Things like the GPA calculations for different schools. Don't be shy. Yes.
My name's Althea. I'm a second-year undergrad student here at St. Michael's College. I'm doing my major in cell and molecular bio with a double minor in French and music. My question would be in regards to what's the difference between the minimum GPA requirements versus the competitive.
Sure. Thank you, Alia, for that question. So I think it's a common question we get asked a lot of times, right? So people often assume that the minimum GPA to get into medical school is kind of what will qualify you to become part of that class. But I'll be honest, so I think for U of T, just as an example, their minimum cutoff is a 3.6 out of undergrad, right? And just to go back to the first year entering class GPAs of 3.93, like there's a huge difference between a 3.6 and a 3.93. That's the average GPA for the entry class. That is not the top 5%, that's the average GPA, right? So when you're applying to medical school across the US and Canada, if you're looking to sort of see, am I competitive or not, you're looking at the average entering class GPA, not the minimum GPA. The minimum GPA really is meant for the schools to sort of screen people based on GPAs, not really meant for you to sort of, as a guide to say, am I eligible or not, right? Having said that, I often get the question that, well, my GPA is a 3.7 or a 3.72, should I apply to medical school or not? And the answer is, unless you're going to try, you're not going to get it, right? If you don't apply, the chances of you getting it are 0. If you apply, we don't know what the chances are depending on your profile, but it's better than 0, I can tell you that, right? So just because you're not necessarily close to the average GPA, it doesn't mean you don't apply. It just means that your odds are going to be lower. You may have to, broaden your application process, the school selection process, have other options in mind, but it doesn't mean you can't apply at all. Hopefully that's sort of the answer to your question.
And the one thing I would add to that is you definitely want to get a sense of, what exactly that sort of, so you can get stats on what each med school, the average accepted class, what the GPA was, and usually it's not available for every school, but you can stratify it from, people who are getting in from a traditional 4-year program to people who are getting in with a master's. The GPA with a master's tends to be a bit lower. With a PhD, there's a bit more leeway as well. So if you're getting in with a traditional 4-year undergrad, that's sort of really the high. But people getting off the 3rd year, that's even higher, because that's even more sort of academic focused in terms of the GPA that's required. So take a look at those stats because they're publicly available, right? If anyone doesn't know about Pre-Med 101, there's a forum. Just Google Pre-Med 101, PREMED 101. Lots of free advice there. People will routinely post their statistics, their profiles, what MCAT scores, what GPAs, the breakdown over the 4 years that they took to get accepted. So that gives you a sense of what exactly people are getting accepted with and what grades people are getting rejected with, right? So not blind hope, right? But definitely apply, but understand and talk to people who are in med school. Talk to people who are physicians to really get a sense of what kind of grades they needed as well.
Yeah, just to give you an idea, there's of the sort of like the process of the file review. And so once you apply to medical school, for U of T, for example, there's 3 different stages. First of all, there's a screening, then there's a file review, and then there's the interview process. And just to give you an idea of the numbers here, so typically around 3,000 plus people apply to the U of T medical school every year. When we get to the file review, it's down to less than half. Less than half of the people make it through the screening. And what does the screening consist? It's usually through just to see if you have the bare minimum courses, and the large majority of it depends on your GPA. So actually about half the people are weeded out because of their GPA is inadequate. So just give you an idea of how important it is, even during the first step from the screening. Some of us won't even, the file reviewers won't even get to see your full application. Perhaps your GPA is not quite up to standard with the other applicants.
Great. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I just have a question regarding what you just said about looking at the courses in the street. So do you actually look at the course load as well? And what if you're taking a 5th year?
So that question had to do with, what's your name?
My name is Zian.
Zia?
Zian.
Zian, okay, perfect. So that question had to do with, during the application process, do you look at the course load? And what was the second part? Course load and?
How many years you took?
How many years? So 5-year applicants, how are they looked upon? Henry, do you want to start with that one, I guess?
Okay, so regarding the course load, different medical schools look at it differently. For U of T specifically, if you take 100% course load, then they will take off 1.0 credit equivalent, of course, every single year of the lowest mark. So for example, if you have taken 100% course load over the 4 years of undergrad, then they will shave off the 4 courses that in which you have received the lowest marks. So that's how they take a look at it that way. But again, different universities, different medical schools look at it very differently. And the second part was perhaps to like a 5th year or beyond, like for example, if you did a master's or something like. So I myself did a master's. By the time if you graduate from undergraduate, then they do look at your GPA, yes, but they also look to see what you've accomplished in the years after your undergrad. For example, have you, from a scholarly perspective, have you done any research? Have you published anything in that regards? As to the specifics of how much the exact percentage of the weights that they put on the GPAs and how does that change after like undergrad into graduate years, I'm not sure of the exact percentage.
Just to kind of add to Henry's comment, so, you know, the reason why that question is important, at least in my mind, is because sometimes you're in a situation where you're like, should I take 4 courses this semester and do really well in 4 courses, or do I do the 5th course and perhaps, you know, compromise, you know, the GPA or the grade for those 4 courses, right? Typically, that's sort of the scenario a lot of people are in, is like, do I overstress sort of my capability versus focusing only on a smaller number of courses? And so the answer to that is, ideally, you want to have the highest GPA possible by whichever means, right? If that means you're going to do 4 courses a year over 5 years, go ahead. As long as you can maintain that GPA, you're doing the best you can possibly do, right? If that means you're going to do 5 courses and still have, you know, a lower GPA, that's probably not as ideal as having 4 courses and a higher GPA. What you don't want to do, which is probably the worst, is having a low course load and a low GPA. That's sort of a fatal situation to be in, right? So you got to decide based on your capabilities. If you want to do 4 courses a year and do amazing those 4 courses, that's perfectly fine. You're not really going to be penalized for taking an extra year. You will be penalized for taking an extra year and just doing horribly in every year. Okay, so.
Yeah, and just to add to that, so that decision on whether to do a 5th year versus go into grad school, and you know what type of grad school, whether it's, you know, a quick sort of, you know, master's that's course-based versus a research-based master's versus a PhD, that's an individual decision, right? So really, you'd have to speak to somebody who can speak to the specifics, because it sort of depends on your situation, depends on what went wrong with that application. If it's the GPA that's sort of way off, then you may just need to sort of consider, you know, other schools that have a lower GPA, or, you know, that 5th year. If you need sort of more time, you're lacking a research component, maybe the master's may, you know, may play a role, but it really depends on the numbers. So it's hard to say, it's hard to give general advice without knowing the actual statistics of your application. Any other questions on GPA? This tends to be the most popular sort of topic in terms of grades and how schools look at, you know, Yep, go ahead.
I was just wondering if we have a withdrawal credit the first 2 years of university, would that matter a lot? Like just 1 or 2 maybe?
Okay, so what's your name?
Jennifer.
Jennifer. So Jennifer's asking if a withdrawal credit in the first 2 years will impact the application, and how does that matter? Samir, you want to speak to that?
So I mean, I think, you know, the answer is going to be very specific to every university, right? I don't think most schools will penalize you for withdrawing courses, you know, later than the usual kind of deadline for those courses. But I think the reality is, if you are concerned about that being a factor in your application, there's always a section where you can comment on, you know, exceptional circumstances or specific situations which you may have encountered, which may have, you know, I guess, prompted you to withdraw from those courses later on. But I don't think, you know, in and of itself, withdrawing from a course is going to have a negative impact on your application. In the US, it may be a little bit different depending on where you're applying, because they do specifically look at, you know, first-year courses and whatnot. But I think for the most part, I wouldn't be too worried about that, right? I think, again, some of these things, you know, are what we call yellow flags, not quite red flags, right? So they may kind of, you know, raise an eyebrow in your application, but if the rest of your application is pristine and kind of validates for everything else you've done, people aren't too worried about that, right? If there's other issues with your application, plus the specific issue, they may have some additional kind of comments or questions about your application. So that's the way I would think of it. It's not something which is fatal in any way, but it's something which, you know, may actually make people wonder why that was the case, and you may have to explain that in some situation, whether it's part of the application or part of the interview stage.
Great. Maybe we'll do one more question and we'll move to the next segment. Yeah, go ahead.
So, Henry mentioned that U of T specifically, I think specifically one per year, or is it 4 in general? As in, would the 4 be from your first year, for example?
Can you just repeat the question as well?
Yeah, so the question is regarding specifically the U of T medical school application process, where they talk about shaving 4.0 credits if you were to take 100% course load in all 4 years of undergraduate. Unfortunately, I actually don't know the details of the algorithm. It just says 4 of your lowest one, so I do believe it is 4 from the whatever year it is. I can't speak to the actual specifics of the algorithm that they use, because by the time they get to me, where I was doing the file review, I actually don't see the grades of. I don't see the grades of the individual applicants. That has been sort of pre-screened by the computer already.
From what I can recall, in relation to your question, it is your 4 lowest grades, or 3 lowest grades, depending on how many years you've done, but it's your lowest grade. It's not specific to every year.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Other thing to kind of keep in mind is, when you're talking about a full course load, it's really your academic year. So the summer does not count as part of that year, so keep that in the back of your mind. If you're taking, for example, 4.5 credits and you're doing the half credit in the summer, that's going to have an impact on how that gets calculated. So just bear that in mind.
Okay. I saw one more hand back there at the same time, so maybe I'll let you ask your question as well. Go ahead.
My name is Brayden, studying bioethics this year. My question was sort of pertaining to how you emphasize the first year marks when they do matter a lot. So say you have such a great first year, but then your marks throughout the rest of undergrad were what you'd say is competitive. Is that going to hurt you so much, or would that sort of not be looked at so much?
So, in terms of, again, just repeating the question. So the question was, if my first year's marks weren't really spectacular, can I compensate for those marks in second, third, and fourth year, and how sort of, detrimental is my first year in that sort of grand scheme of things? So I guess the first question, that I would actually ask somebody like yourself in that situation is, how bad was your first year, right? So if your GPA in first year was a 1.5 or 1.6 or 2.0, it's really difficult to come back from that, just to be honest, right? Having said that, a lot of schools realize that people, when they're transitioning from high school to undergrad, the first year is a challenging year. And so some schools, like for example, Western and Queens, will actually have an algorithm where they will consider either your last 2 years in terms of your best GPA or any 2 of your best years. There are some considerations among some schools where they do give more emphasis to your senior years. That's not something which is universal. So it will for sure limit your chances to applying to all the schools in Canada and the US, but it's certainly not something which is impossible by any means. There's tons of people I know who had an average or below average first year, but did amazingly well in second, third, and fourth year, and were able to easily notch a number of programs in Canada and the US.
And I think the emphasis on the first year is just because we want, you basically want to get into that groove of knowing how to study as soon as possible, right? So if you can manage to get high marks in the first year, then that would be great. And as Samir has put out, some schools, not U of T though, but other schools do look at your final year or final 2 years as being weighted more so than your earlier 2 years.
Okay, great. So we're going to go on to the next segment, but just to close this whole first piece about academics and the GPA, one piece that I often get, who here is a U of T student? Most people? Yeah, okay. So, there's always this question about, should I have picked a different school, right? This is like, I think we all go through that. There is some validity to that thought, right? And I guess this is sort of more applicable to the high school students who are here. I mean, well, maybe not, because I've had friends who've actually transferred to York after first year and then got in. So, I'm not recommending that. It sort of depends on your situation, right? So it really depends on what kind of environment you thrive in, right? There are people who prefer smaller university with that attention that professors can give them. And if that's the kind of person you are, it's important to recognize that, because U of T has a lot of strengths. And certainly, within sort of individual colleges, there's lots of programs for attention to individual students, but it's never going to get that sort of, small school feel that like a small university can actually have, right? But you know, in terms of things like, you know, the quality of the professors that you can get with respect to, you know, your research backgrounds, and in terms of world leaders, opinion leaders that are, you know, writing columns and writing books and writing papers, it's hard to beat that in terms of a Canadian university, right? So if you can leverage all those strengths of U of T, and we'll talk to that in terms of, like, you know, the third theme, the research theme, then this is really the place, this is the right place for you to be. And the other piece that I'm just going to put out there, right, and this is really sort of depends on you, it depends on you. If you're looking to apply to, you know, like a top tier U.S. school, like, you know, something like Hopkins or Harvard, Stanford or Yale, it's really hard to get into these schools if they've not heard about your undergrad institution, and that's just that just goes out to sort of the data out there. So there are only a couple of Canadian schools that have ever, you know, successfully had people apply to the MD programs at the top tier Ivy League schools. So Toronto is one of them. But, you know, again, like for most Canadian schools, it really doesn't matter. All right.